Okay, everybody, we'll kick off. Thank you for those who have joined us today for the live session. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Fiona Richardson. I'm the Director of the ERP desk with Morgan McKinley. This is my colleague, Rhoda Hurley. As mentioned, this is a Q&A session with James Munro, who I'll introduce shortly. So please feel free to put in some questions into the Q&A box and we will feed them to James and he'll answer them here live on the spot. So the name of today's webinar is Don't Let the Technology Dictate Your ERP Transformation. So we are very grateful to have James in our presence today. So James Munro is currently the Programme Director at Dimplex in Dublin. He's led one of Ireland's first global S4 rollouts. The project spanned 12 countries. There's about 8,000 employees in Dimplex. There's 10 manufacturing sites, 14 distribution centres. So really, really big project and one of the first ones to be led out of Ireland for S4. Prior to Dimplex, James was head of programme management for Dyson in the UK and spearheaded multiple enterprise technology transformations. So James plays a pivotal part of transformation from a technology perspective, but also guides the C-suite on the digital transformation journey to ensure business successes and growth and continued alignment with the company strategies. So you're very welcome, James.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming down. Thanks for joining us today. I suppose just to kick us off, you and I have been talking a good bit over the last 6 months just on this webinar. And we discussed a topic, what we wanted to talk about. I wanted to keep it kind of current, wanted to keep it interesting. And it was actually you who came up with the idea, the title, Don't Let the Technology Dictate Your Transformation. So why don't you kind of kick it off from your perspective? What do you mean by that?
Well, I think a lot of programs look at, when you look at SAP, it all becomes about SAP. About putting in SAP, delivering SAP, where it shouldn't be about SAP. SAP is simply the tool. It's the mechanism to drive your strategy. I've been on many programs, and even ones that we've done recently, where there's a tendency to get hung up on thinking that technology is going to automatically solve your people and process problems, whereas it won't. If you think you're going to put in SAP, which is a tremendously powerful tool, I'm a firm believer in the product. I've worked over it many years. I don't work for SAP. But if you think just by putting the tool in is going to automatically solve your business challenges, then you're going to get automatic chaos. So it's very important when you start a transformation like this that you don't focus on the fact that you're putting in SAP. Now, I know that might sound a bit stupid because things can suddenly just become all about the SAP program. One of the things we did, is you want to make sure you brand your program about transformation and try not to actually mention SAP that much in a lot of your communications, because it's about what you're transforming to and the why. So focus on the why, not the what. All your users, the executives, it's why are you putting in SAP? Not the what. What are you doing? You're putting SAP, but why is the important thing. And quite often these transformations will fail because you deliver the technology and it works, but you actually haven't really changed. You may not have changed your processes, you may not have changed the people, and actually you're using a really expensive system exactly how you used to. And so I think it's very, very important to set up the program from the beginning to focus on why you're doing SAP. And yes, some people might be watching and saying, well, we've got really old legacy platforms, we have to upgrade those. Of course you do. Of course you do. But again, what was the purpose of your old legacy platforms? SAP should be driving your business strategy, not dictating your business strategy. And I think at times it can be very easy to get caught up in looking at it from the wrong perspective. Okay. So that's why I say.
Yeah. So don't just get obsessed with putting in S4 or Fusion or
whatever, it doesn't matter.
Microsoft F&O. Okay. So it comes from the strategy, which is your board board strategy,
Yes.
board level strategy.
Yeah.
So what, I suppose that relationship between, I suppose, you as a program director and the C-suite has got to be key.
Yeah.
How do you manage that? How do you manage the relationship with and partner with the C-suite to ensure success?
So it'll vary between each C-suite executive and it'll vary between each company. I think, again, like the SAP supporting a strategy, you'll go in, you can find yourself in a position where you're actually trying to sell SAP to the executive. A lot of the time you'll have like the CFO, they're going to sponsor it. But they may be sponsoring because maybe IT have been saying, hey, look, let's do S4, let's do S4. And you're like, oh, okay, all right. Or in my particular case, the CFO was like, we need to drive digital transformation. So you might have one executive that's really bought into it, and then others that see it as very expensive and a tremendous business disruption. And that's their challenges. So what you need to do is, again, rather than focusing on saying whether it's the CEO, CFO, HR, whoever might be going, oh, we're putting SAP, it should be understand their business strategy, understand what each executive, what their goals, what their objectives are, how they see the company moving forward, and then translate what they are doing, their strategy, into how SAP can help that. Because also all the decisions you make on the program should be aligned with the company strategy. Sometimes you go, well, that's how SAP works, and we're going to move it that way. Well, I don't think SAP needs a lot of customization, right?
Okay.
No, just to be clear, I'm not saying that might sound like I was going to say customize SAP, but again, SAP, you can, through configuration, I mean, there's always customization to a degree in SAP, but through the right level of configuration, you align your processes based on how the strategy of the business. And again, and like SAP will rightly tell you about how the innovative tools and processes can help drive business process transformation. It's absolutely true. But really what you want to do is look at, again, I'm repeating myself a bit here, but like how the strategy works, how the people are going to run the process to support that strategy, and SAP will support that. It did 100% will. But don't make it all about just putting SAP in. So to really properly make sure I'm answering your question, is that doing a big S4 program will benefit everybody in the organization. And you just have to, you start at the C-suite level. One of the best examples is through rich analytics, you can make their life, you can improve outside their decision making. Because if they have real-time information, instead of having to go to someone in their team, wait 2 weeks to get a report, and then they get the report and it's all out of date, you give them rich analytical dashboards they can see into their business, and they can make better decisions. And that's one of the biggest selling points I would be giving to the executives, is the insight into the business that maybe they don't have right now. I mean, but again, it depends on the executive.
And so it's like data-driven decision-making, that's up to, okay, fair enough. You talk about people a lot, and you and I have talked about how important the role of people is in a transformation. And that's quite a broad topic, because there's so many people in a transformation. There's the program team, there's your systems integrator team, there's your BAU people on the ground. And I suppose if we kind of take those kind of segments of people, how do we manage the challenge of, let's say, any organization that has someone using, I'm going to like an old ERP for years and kind of uses Excel on the side and really happy. So you've got that kind of body of people. How do you manage change for them? How do you identify your change agents who are really going to be good at it? How do you kind of tie all that together?
Well, I think the first thing to consider when you're establishing a program is you're setting up a program team, and this is not a technical program team, right? There's lots of people with technical skills that are very, very important, who do all, they take care of all, the basis and the custom code and all these things, right?
Okay.
But when I say you set up a program team, it has to be a very cross-functional team, which includes the business. What you don't want is a program team here and then a business team there. You have to be one of the same. So one of the things you want to do is find the people in the business who are change agents, and that sounds like a real cliche thing to say, but I think you want to find the individuals who understand that maybe the way things are today aren't quite right, that we need to change, and you bring them onto the program, whether it's full-time, part-time, or ongoing engagement. So you want to get them in, and they're the people who are, whether they're super users or process owners or subject matter experts, they're working alongside the rest of the team, whether it's a data migration team or whoever it might be. So you have to bring them in. I think when you're doing a big transformation, again, it's going to depend on your company, right? So if you're doing a big transformation, say Google, Twitter, one of those techs, I think they're always evolving, changing, right? Yeah. So, but other organisations, I think you, in my mind, you've broadly got sort of three categories of people. You can have people who don't want to change. Yeah. Okay. Then you've got people who want to change but just don't know how. And then you'll have people who are really the change agents, so they recognise processes are wrong, they've been actively evolving and coming up with new ideas, new ways of operating, new processes. But sometimes what you have to do is look at, again, when you're establishing a transformation team, is that you have to pretty quickly identify the people who don't want to change. Yeah. And manage that. Manage that situation. Okay, and you've got to give people a chance, but also you have to understand their motives. And this comes back to the why. Why, making sure what you don't want to do with those particular people, or anyone, for example, is just say, well, we're putting in SAP. They're going to go, well, so what? You want to make it has to be the why. In some cases, the why is not going to benefit them, but you just have to. Sometimes that happens. So you have those people that don't want to change. And maybe you can work on them for them to see the light, right? They may not even be change agents, but there are other people who want to change but don't know how, like I said. But then I think sometimes you want to bring in maybe new people to the organisation who have been there, done that, and have fresh perspectives. Yeah. But I think it depends on each organisation. Each organisation will have different levels of people, and it isn't one size fits all. And then you've established your. Yes, it's in the title, transformation. Transformation is change, it's evolving, and then you bring that team together, and then everyone's working on the same outcome. Same goals. Yeah, same goals. Yeah.
And then how do you manage the, because traditionally, or not traditionally, I think that's a bit unfair, but we do hear some stories about the SI team and the program team being completely at odds, and what's your take on that?
So I've worked with lots of SIs. We're currently partnering with IBM. I've worked with Deloitte, Accenture, Capgemini, lots of them. As a program director, I think if you find yourself in a position where the program's gone in a very bad place, and if you're there blaming the SI, then what you need to do is go into the bathroom and look in a mirror. Okay, that's what you need to do, because the relationship with I think it's important that you recognise that how you work with an SI is it's a two-way street. And it starts from the very beginning of when you do your RFP, you do your system integrator selector, and it's at that point you have to make sure that you're both on the same page. Whether you've got a fixed price contract, very variable time and materials, where it can go wrong is that's where it will initially go wrong, because there's a misalignment of expectations at the very beginning. People might say, oh, well, this SI did this to us and they change request the hell out of us. You should have seen that in the statement of work. Yeah. If you've been there, done that. Yes, there are times when SIs have challenges. Yes, they've underperformed. Maybe they haven't had the right capability. But you need to see that early on. And working in SI isn't about beating them up all the time. It's about a partnership. And there is healthy tension. And you also have to take their feedback. Yeah. You can get yourself in a position where you go, I am right all the time. My team have done everything right. You're wrong. And if you're in that position, you're going to be in trouble, because I can say on the programs I've done, I have not been perfect. It may come as a shock to people. true. I've made mistakes, and in my recent dealings with IBM, with the partners, etc., we sit down and we have open and honest conversations both ways. So it's very important that, and also to keep it at that senior level, because you want to walk into a program office and you'll have your SIs, you'll have contractors, you'll have people. You should not be able to tell. If you have all your SIs sitting on one side of the room, and your team, the business team on another, you're in trouble. You shouldn't be able to tell the difference. They should just work seamlessly. And even when there is tension, and look, I've had many discussions with the likes of IBM and others, but we keep it at our level. We have our discussions, we have our arguments, we work through it, and we go and have a beer, right? Okay, but you have to make sure you've got that working relationship. If it's gone completely wrong, and then you also need to recognise you have to take some accountability of that, because you haven't. I don't want to use the word control, I almost did, but you have to make sure that you're in partnership, and if you're not, it'll just go completely haywire. So it's really got to get right at the beginning, and then continuously work with them, and you have to have honest feedback both ways. Both ways.
And I think you touched on a subject there that it's so important across all areas of transformation is the leadership. Because that's where it really goes feet on. When the leadership is, as you said, the issues between you and the SI, not between the people on the ground, and it should kind of go unnoticed.
100%. And if you're setting up a big program, and look, I've been there, you're going to hire people and they're going to be wrong. Right? I went through 4 data managers. I got it wrong. Right? But we got it wrong, and you got it. Oh God, what's this guy doing? But we just couldn't land on it. We got it wrong. And a lot of that was because the SI was saying, look, it's not working, it's not working. But then also on else, I'm like, look, that solution lead there, it's just not right. But sometimes, so you've also got to have the open conversation and manage that situation, because otherwise it festers, and people on big programs, when they see other people not performing, it brings everyone down. And if you don't do something about that, whether it's course correction, doing performance management, whatever it might be, you have to act quickly. And again, SIs, especially in this market, they're struggling to get good people. Absolutely, and if you have a big program team and everyone is perfect on day one, well, that will be probably the first time in an S4 transformation journey that's happened. Right? You're going to make mistakes, but program directors get swapped out a lot. Hasn't happened to me.
I've heard. Ronan, I'll pass it to you. Any questions from the audience?
Just one touching on the leadership there as well. Tah is asking about managing across global functions. So looking at your senior stakeholders, both internal and external, and how you manage challenging situations with difficult messages, scope creep across global functions.
Across global functions. So
there you go now.
Well, there's a couple of questions in that, I think, but a lot of these programs are international. I think they're a bit easier now than they were before, because before the pandemic, you're probably going to ask this later, but I'll answer it now. Before the pandemic, there wasn't as much adoption of, let's say, technical collaboration. Right, so it was very difficult when you had someone in Australia, someone in India, and someone in Ireland. Right. Teams, Zoom, whatever, has helped that a lot. I think it's very important when you're looking at in different regions that where possible, you at least try and meet face-to-face with me at least once. Just to build that rapport and that relationship. Yes, that hasn't been possible in the last couple of years, but I think the other thing is to ensure that people who are in different locations aren't feel like they're just a black box over there. people too.
Yeah.
And that, for me, that also applies if you have an SI and you have people nearshore or offshore working in Manila, India, Romania. Don't just look at them as bots; they're people too, right? And I think we brought a few people over from Manila just to get to know them, and it really fosters that relationship. So I think that's really important, and it's also you've got to be very mindful of the cultural differences.
Yes.
As well. So I did an SAP implementation once where we were running Japan and Australia in parallel.
Okay.
And we were doing the
Keep going.
okay.
Yeah.
We're running Japan and Australia in parallel, and we're actually doing it was a Dyson, so it's similar, obviously similar company, similar products, similar supply chains. But we're doing the design workshops at the same time with Australians and Japanese in the room. Don't ever do that.
Okay.
Right?
Respect that there's different cultural differences.
Yeah, I can say this because I'm an Australian, but I think maybe we have a different way of interacting, say, Japanese.
Yeah.
So you have to be very mindful of cultural differences as well when you're doing these things. I think Australians are a bit more direct and blunt.
Yeah.
Maybe when I've worked in British and Irish, maybe that isn't always the case.
Tend not to be.
North America have a different culture, and everyone brings different aspects. But you have to be real mindful of that as well when you go across.
But it's interesting because we're so kind of keen to be globalized and getting everyone on the same page. But I think, like to your point, you have to respect that people are different as well, and so you got to work with them.
And be very careful if English isn't their first language.
Okay.
Slow down your speech. Don't use colloquialisms. I learned that pretty quickly when I moved from Australia to Europe and started dealing with non-English speaking people. But first of all, they couldn't understand my accent. And second of all, they didn't understand all my jargon.
Yes.
Does that answer part of that first question?
So
I hope that answers that question probably. Scope creep.
Yeah, it's the difficult messaging, prioritization, scope creep, but like you mentioned,
Yeah, so scope creep, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say the program we did, we kept the scope.
Yeah. On time, in budget.
Anyone who's watching on this on my team will know that we scope creep, I won't say it's inevitable, but it's very hard to control it. I think when you're looking at scope, there's two things you have to think about because if you think about it from a transformation perspective, there's a lot, you could have a really, really broad scope and it all will deliver tremendous value, but can the business absorb that amount of change in one go? Now, to make that more tangible, it might be that there's a desire from the business to redo the digital platform, redo your redo your ERP platform, put a new CRM system in, all that in one go. Now, I'm talking a bit of a macro scope. All these things need to be done, but trying to do all that at the same time, depending on the organization, might be too much. So it makes sense, but you also have to consider it's not so much a technical delivery, it's how much is it going to change the business? And I think you have to make sure you're translating that scope into the impact on the business. Now, on the flip side, there'll be scope creep based on something that is needed for the business transformation. I think one of the things, in terms of how best to control scope creep, I think there's a couple of things. Always tie it to your business outcomes.
Yes.
So what is going to be the benefit of this particular scope element?
Okay.
And I think when you if you get into the bit more agile world, you really want a Moscow. It is a must-have, should have, could have. They'll always say it's a must-have, but you've got to really challenge that.
Okay.
I think also, again, if you think about it a bit more agile, you want to make sure you're delivering, let's say, the minimal viable product, right? And if you want to keep the scope lean, which is so hard to do, it really is, be clear that the go live is the beginning, not the end. Right? Because I will guarantee you that what they think is important now is not going to be important on day 2 of go live, or probably week 2. That's when it all comes to life.
Okay.
So, and And I think it's also how you set up the program, because a lot of the time you get the classic problem with business users: if we don't get it all now, we're never going to get it. What you're better off is keeping the scope lean. And I'm not going to sit here and say I've done this perfectly and it's easy to do. It's not. But try and deliver the value quickly and then incrementally build upon that. Because I think there's a risk that you'll get so caught up in this must-have report.
Yeah.
But doesn't, I really need this report. But let's just ask them a couple of questions. How often do you run it? Once a month. How long does it take you to run it? 20 minutes. You know. Or if I don't have the report we're going to need to do, well, I'm going to have to download two Excel spreadsheets and do a VLOOKUP, and it'll take me half an hour.
Okay.
There's some examples, but you've also got a challenge. But it's very hard because everyone has their own. But I think it's where the senior leadership can become very important, because users on the ground see things from their perspective, not the end-to-end process, and not the. Maybe you've got to keep reminding the overall objectives.
Mm-hmm.
So you need senior leaderships to give that message down, to sort of keep things lean, keep it simple, but that's hard as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes senior leaders have very firm views on things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's interesting, like obviously everybody has gone through some sort of implementation or some sort of change within their organizations. Where, like, the change management, the business readiness, the communication, if you speak to a change manager, they would say, I should be the first person hired into this into this program.
Yeah.
Like, but also there's an element of like over communicating and people being like sick of the message. And
also how you communicate.
Yeah. So what's your take on change management? How, what point of the transformation do they come in? What's too early? What's too late?
Well, I don't think it's ever too early.
Okay. Yeah.
But I think you have to be. You have to think about your change strategy and your communications plan.
Mm-hmm.
How you communicate is very important. Sending out email newsletters, personally wasting time.
But what's the alternative?
Now, one of the things I would say, is very important change management. If you do not get ahead of it, wild rumors start.
Yes.
Right? Wild rumors start really early on about where they're coming in and they're going to shut this down, they're going to do this.
This team will be moved there.
So you want to get, and the communication and change journey has to start at a very high level and then get more specific as it goes along. So when you're starting up, it's really just the broad why, and then it has to become more targeted as it moves along. But you have to make sure you've got a very good, robust communications plan. Because that's what scares people, not knowing or getting wrong information, or also getting feedback. So what's interesting is if at the beginning you do an employee survey about the transformational change, don't say what do you think about SCP. Well, you might ask one of the questions. You'll see if you're doing it right, you'll see it evolve as you're gauging employee feedback. And you might do things like, as you get further down the line, you'll ask, what do they think of the new processes and systems, right? And you'll ask that when they're just early on engagement. You'll see it might be broadly negative or concerning, or I don't know stuff, but then do it in 8 weeks, and if you're doing it right, you see it change. But if you don't, you're getting the feedback. Because without the people, it's nothing, you're dead. Right? I think a lot of time transformations programs underinvest in transformation because they spend all their money on, like I've been there, right? All your money is absorbed in development and solution architects. You should be spending 8 to 10% of your budget on change.
8 to 10% on change. Okay.
But you've also got to make sure it isn't, it's very tangible, because you don't want to get like a great change director in who just stays in the cloud for the whole time.
Yeah.
Right. I think you need to have a bit of, let's say, fluffiness around the communication, but then you've got to also make it tangible as you go. So it's very important that but also the change team aren't disconnected from the rest of the program. They understand, because also it's very easy to have a change and training team over here and the rest of the program here, or 2 don't even know what's going on. So you have it all embedded within the program.
And what's your take on change people taking, like, so you have a change team, and however big it is, 4 or 5 people, taking some people from the business into the change team?
Absolutely.
That's it, yeah, okay. And okay, you mentioned at the start the communication about like emails and newsletters. Like, I agree, like if they get scanned by me.
Just as a side point, ban email on your program.
Okay.
Ban it, don't use it.
Oh, and how,
Don't use it.
so what's the,
Use it to book meetings.
so what's the
Talk on
alternative?
Teams or Zoom or Google or whatever you've got. Don't email, don't send attachments, don't send documents. Use Microsoft Teams or use a collaborative platform to talk. Chat or
I am,
yeah. I was getting on my team how many emails I get from it. Very few. You set up, look, it depends on your collaboration platform, of course, but you want people in there collaborating, talking on chat. It's so much more effective, just quick chats.
Yeah.
And then just pick up the phone. Well, the Teams call, don't email because you don't.
Yeah. I totally, yeah, no, I want to be on the same page there. But for a change
Sorry, I
team,
interrupted your question.
yeah, right, you're fine. For a change team, like that's not an option. They can't be ironing the whole. So like, and if we're saying newsletters, they're kind of old school. I agree.
So change starts at the top.
Yeah.
You need, I think you need the senior executive in the company explaining the why.
Yeah.
And cascading that message down. Do things like maybe do an interactive video where the CEO, the CFO is explaining the importance of this program with the key messages. Then it's backed up by town halls. Go around your sites, go and look at people in the factory or in the warehouse or in the call center, whatever it might be, and talk to them face to face. And not death by PowerPoint but it's interactive discussion. Like Q&As, but you want to go with key, and this is what your communication plan should be. And yes, they say things like, well, you put newsletters up on the walls around the building. Yeah, that's good, but that's all complimentary. If you want to change, you have to talk. You have to interact and not dictate. Some change, of course, is difficult. Some change is not going to benefit the employees. Some change could be as a result of this, you're putting in shared services.
Yeah.
So some people, it's going to directly impact in a negative
way, like lose their job.
But when that happens, do it the right way, and people can respect that. Some people, they're going to be annoyed, but
of course,
just always think of the people, whether it's a negative or positive outcome.
Yeah.
But I think it has to be face-to-face collaboration, or if that's not possible because of global issues through Teams. But don't send emails, don't send newsletters. Like there's lots of tools like there's Yammer on Teams, and there's social media, all these internal social media platforms. Like that's the way.
Yeah. Instagramming people. I'm just kidding. Whatever works.
Just talk to people. And let them talk back to you.
Like you've just gone through a really large transformation, and you need to do it largely.
Still going
through it, through a pandemic.
Yeah.
What's the benefits of that? What were the negatives? Like and you've done them, I suppose, without a pandemic, so you've got experience in both.
Before the pandemic, we delivered our GD Americas business completely remotely.
Okay.
End to end.
Glendiplex Americas.
Glendiplex Americas. So that was Canada and the US.
Okay.
Well, we delivered the back end of our heating and ventilation business in UK and Ireland, actually, as it was all kicking in, right? So, but if I take the Glendiplex Americas example, we delivered the whole thing remote. Now, before that, I would have said, if you'd asked me, I said, that would be impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible to do. Can't do it. But, people at the time would have disagreed with me, and they wouldn't have been right, but that was my view. Pandemic, obviously, a million negatives, but one positive to come out of it was, I think, when we used to do things like UAT, where you're doing user acceptance testing across multiple sites, where there's interactions required. So you'd have an order processing team in might be country X, and a manufacturing team in country Y, and you're trying to maybe do a day in the life activity. People, and again, every company's different, so maybe given companies were more advanced than others, but there was maybe not as much collaboration electronically as used to be, and so the handoffs were a lot more difficult. All of a sudden, you had this bloody awful pandemic, but people were accustomed to only being able to communicate electronically. So when you are actually trying to have multiple sites, the use of the technology has actually fostered that ease in communication. Because I remember before it really hit, we were trying to set up Teams chats. Like, okay, audit management team and AR and manufacturing and warehousing, just talk on this channel. But they weren't using it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm picking up and bringing the old desk phone.
I know.
Not that works anymore. But whereas then this came in, and that's how everyone operated. That said, it's a balance, right? So yes, we delivered in Glendon-Max Americas. We delivered successfully, delivered on time.
Wow. In budget.
In budget, but it was a lot more difficult because we couldn't get in. Well, I think there's 2 points. First of all, people make the program work. Okay, so it's a lot harder to build up. It takes longer to build up rapport and relationship with people when you're just on a Teams call. It happens, but what you really want as a program is you want to get everybody together at the very beginning, have a good interactive session, and go out, have a few drinks, or whatever you want to do, something that's fun, and so that people get to know each other and build up that working relationship. And also the business don't see you as some IT guy. Yeah. Right? I hate that, right? And I always hated being said like that. You're just a person, right? So firstly, you build that working relationship. But if you're doing everything remote, that takes longer. And it's not impossible, but it just takes longer. I think the bigger challenge, though, is that it takes longer to understand how a place operates. So if you're building we did a complex extended warehouse management solution. We had never been in the warehouse. Okay. We did things like they got on Teams, they walked around the site on camera. Okay. But it takes longer. And also you miss things because you're also dependent. The business who may have never done a big transformation before may not remember to tell you something. But if you're in the warehouse, you go, what's that over there? Okay. Oh, right. Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you about that. So this is a printer system. Yeah. Oh, there's a whole new warehouse. Well, it happens. Yeah. Right? So that's the benefit. Now, so it can be done, but you just got to be mindful of those things. And I think it actually, what you could do face to face in a day can potentially take longer electronically. But it complements. I think it's hybrid. I'm a firm believer in hybrid. You shouldn't all be in the office 5 days a week. You shouldn't all need to be traveling to where around the world to be there all the time, right? But you want to get the balance. And I think it varies on what your program is. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's the way the world's going. Norma, any other questions from the audience?
Yeah, there's a good question here as well about, you were talking about the change side, but do you feel that people usually under or overestimate how much a system implementation will impact the business, and how do you manage that?
They grossly underestimate it. You may have people who've been on. You may have had people who've been on the journey before. They'll probably tell you awful things about what it was like, etc. But I would say you never really know what it's going to be like until you've done it. But it's very hard for people to understand what it means. But I think it is underestimated more often than not. People will say things like, we know it's going to be a big change and we know it's going to be difficult, but I think they don't truly understand the scale of what it's going to take. So if I was to say between underestimating and overestimating, it's definitely underestimating in most cases, I would suggest.
How have you managed, or how have you, what's the word, like measure success within a transformation, or how do people measure success within a transformation?
I think a lot of transformation programs fail to meet their objectives. I think it's easy to go, well, SAP's in and it works. So what?
Yeah.
So what? And right? Oh, it's in, it works. So like from my perspective, right? If I put in SAP and it's working in the business, I'm not going to go, great. Right, we just spent millions.
Yeah.
And what have we achieved? Nothing. New system. No. So it's not about just getting a working system. Yes, initially on, you want it stable. You're not going to deliver benefits on day one in most cases, and you have to be very realistic with that. I think one of the challenges is I think two things will happen. Either you don't realize the benefits, or you don't realize that you're realizing the benefits.
Okay.
Right? Because you may not baseline what you want to make sure you're doing. And again, look, I've made this mistake, right? Is you need to baseline your KPIs, right? Where you are today.
Mm-hmm.
Because also what will happen when you transition and you go live with SAP. SAP really shines a light on some things that maybe weren't working before.
Okay.
The natural reaction is to think it's a systems problem. Actually, that problem was always there and you couldn't see it. And you'll get things like user adoption challenges. And look, you will have some technical issues, right? It's going to happen, right? You just got to work through them quickly. But if you haven't baselined where you are, then even when you have an improvement, you'll have users saying, well, we really need to do this. And it can actually become quite a problem when you're not going, well, actually, there is an improvement here. But just at a really senior level, you want to make sure again, it depends on the business, but like it might be different as an example. What's a different? It might be
which?
Different, delivered on time and full.
Thank you.
And you say, well, currently we're running at X%, and our target is to improve that by 5%.
Yeah.
Okay. You may have done that, but if you didn't baseline it, then how do you know it's improved? How do you know where you're going if you don't know where you are? Right. So what you want to make sure you're doing, this forms part of the business case. I'm sure every program will go in a business case. The problem is half the time, the business case puts in, then you start the program and it gets thrown in the shredder. Yeah. And you don't have a benefits realization plan, but really importantly, you need ownership. So you can have a business case, you can have a great, benefits realization plan, but people need to be accountable for owning the delivery of those benefits.
Yeah.
And you need to help them measure those benefits, because that's the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of benefits are tangible, a lot are intangible, and you have to work out how you're going to measure them.
Yeah.
Employee satisfaction surveys, things like that. It's really, really important that after about 6 months, you really get into a benefits realization. But the other challenge of that is a big program. You might have just been doing one entity, one subsidiary, and then you're moving on. You've got to make sure you've got that, let's say, auxiliary force coming behind to drive the continuous improvement, drive the benefits realization.
Absolutely.
And that's why I think a lot of programs, they don't, a huge amount don't deliver their objectives. Maybe, or they don't deliver within the time frames they're expecting.
Yeah.
Because it was so focused about just getting SAP in. It's in, yes.
Yeah. But where do we move?
So what?
Yeah, what do we move down?
Great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anything else on your end?
Yeah, there's one here kind of moving a bit more into that in the technology side. There's someone asking, do you think that starting at kind of we want the same as we have now, for example, ECC to S4 is a good start, or should you always start with blue sky thinking and assess all of your options, or what's easier to implement?
From a technology perspective, I think it's in some times it could be easier just to give them what they've got today.
Yeah.
Because it just shuts them up.
Yeah.
Right. You can fall into the trap to go, look, we'll get it in and then we'll change. But you know what happens? It doesn't change. It just, you have to use the program as a transformation mechanism. And and I think one of the things about if you're going from ECC to S4, that's I haven't actually done. I've implemented ECC and I've implemented S4. I've never done actually the upgrade.
Just okay.
I think that's a real challenge in itself, because everyone will love that damn GUI. You have to put a transaction code in, and you put VAO2.
Is this an ECC or?
This is ECC,
yeah.
Right? You go to S4, apart from all the benefits of HANA and lots of technical benefits there, which I won't bore you with. But you've got the excellent Fury layer, which is all app-based, and there is a multitude of new applications and ways of working and analytics. What the challenge you'll get is that users may just go, look, I don't like Fury.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go and use GUI. And then they'll start asking for things. They'll start downloading spreadsheets. When there's a beautiful Fury tile application that you click on it and it gives you nice little analytics. But instead they're going in and they're trying to use S4 like it's ECC. S4 is not ECC. Yeah, it's got some similarities, but it's not. It's different and it's far more powerful. So I think you need to change before, not after, or during. I should say.
Yeah. So would it be think blue sky? Don't necessarily think you want to migrate to the latest version of.
Pretend your company doesn't exist.
Yes.
And how would you do it?
Yeah.
Because you get so stuck on what you're doing today, as opposed if you just stopped and if you would start this company again, would you operate that way? That's a question you should ask yourself. In some cases, some of that change you just can't do in the time frame, but and so some of it is you are going to have to plan to maybe do after. I don't want to sound like I'm contradicting myself, but if you don't change during the program, it's twice as hard to change after.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose a big point and something that we're always involved in is the resourcing of these programs.
Oh, yeah.
And like that is honestly one of the biggest challenges, isn't it?
Yes.
And you've done it really successfully in Blend Implex. Yeah. So I suppose what was your approach to resourcing such a large transformation program?
I think you have to be ready to build your own internal capability. If you are going to try and go to market and get the ready-made resources on your program, like for your entire team, you're going to be waiting a long time and you're not going to get there, right? You have to blend your team with people who've been there, done that, with people who want an opportunity.
Yeah.
So one of the things we did was, look, it's also part of the role of the SI. And what you should try and do with the SI, in my view, is we did this with IBM. You want to ease out their resources as the program progresses.
Yeah.
So it's like a tool in the box up front. So, for example, in our first phase, IBM were completely responsible for all of the data migration, technical and planning, and that was a conscious choice because we didn't have the capability. But we brought people in with them to get the capability so they eased themselves out because and I think you need to do that with lawyers, and particularly around, I mean, again, it depends on the industry, but get people off. If you say you're manufacturing like we are, get people off your production lines. Just get them off.
Off factory floor.
Look for someone who's looking for opportunity. Have they heard of SCP? No, who cares?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They're looking for an opportunity. Get them in, working alongside and upskill them. You have to, if you invest early on in your program, these programs usually go for 4 or 5 years. After about 2 years, you are going to be reaping the rewards.
Yeah.
Because you've built your internal capability. You're not going to have it in its entirety on day one.
No.
You can't also just have completely new people who've never done it for on day one, because that's not going to work either. So you've got to get the right blend. So you want to mix it with, good program directors who've done it, or but more like, we got a good couple of business analysts who've been there, done that, pairing with people who've never done it before, and you're growing your capability. The market is incredibly challenging. The demand is for good talent is like in every industry. But the other thing I'd say is if you're looking for ready-made S4 people, it's not easy.
Yeah.
And you don't need, it doesn't need to be that way. Like you've got to grow the capability, but it's a balance.
Did you hire everyone in Ireland?
Initially, yes.
Yeah.
Before the pandemic, everyone was going to be based in a Dublin office.
Yeah.
We did have a number of people from the UK, but they were like super users.
They were part of Blend Implex UK, were they?
Yeah, exactly. Once the pandemic hit, it really, I mean, I was always I was always thinking, no, maybe we need to broaden out to Europe or whatever. But I think there's a bit of like, well, is that post-pandemic though? I think you consider multiple options, but you have to be mindful of how you want to get people face to face at times.
Yeah.
So you don't want people spread out too much everywhere.
Yeah.
But again, it also depends on their role. Some people, remote work might work absolutely fine.
Exactly. Yeah. Anything else going on your end?
I suppose just in terms of sustaining change as well, you said there that the go live is kind of the beginning rather than the end. How would you go about ensuring that people within the transformation don't end up falling back into old habits?
Like using their Excel spreadsheets.
Using their Excel spreadsheets,
Yeah,
exactly.
and that's really difficult. I think, one of the key messages you do have to make is that the go live is the beginning of the journey. Right? Everyone can get very focused on just getting the thing live. That's when actually everything starts.
Yeah.
That's day one. Everything is about preparing for day one. In terms of how you manage the falling back in old habits, it's going to happen at times.
Yeah.
There's a number of ways that you need to address it. I think you have to have clear benefits owners who are accountable for delivering the benefits. Okay, if you take, say, finance for example, with S4, there's very good functionality with the universal journal, etc., that makes month end it should be a lot smaller, shorter. A lot of finance people, being finance, will be inclined to just download stuff through Excel, create an industry out of reporting in Excel, and just spend huge amounts of time on not a lot of value-add activity, and not necessarily their fault, right? So if you're a benefits owner, you need to drive the benefits. You want to shorten your month end. You want to make sure you're shortening it to say 3 days. So that's the benefit you're on the hook for. The way you're going to do that is to change behaviours, but also take them on the journey. People naturally want to download things to Excel. In my view, you shouldn't download anything out of S4 to Excel.
Okay.
Right? There's AFO, it's connected real time. It is Excel anyway, but I'm talking a bit technically, but it's all real time reporting. And so I think you have to manage it a couple of ways. The benefits owners and business process owners need to drive. Like, if you're a business process owner, you own the business process. You have to drive it, and you have to be incentivized to do that. And they also might be the benefits owner. Well, the case they are. So you also, as a company, have to incentivize them to realize the benefits. A lot of the time you don't do that, and they're like, well, what do I care? I think also change management, technical change management is important. You'll get change requests in that will be something that just doesn't align with the strategy, doesn't align with the new process, and you have to reject those. You have to be very strong from a technical.
Who owns that? The change management piece. Who owns those requests that come in? Is it the SAP? Is it the technical guys, or is it the programmers, or the change managers?
I think you have to the business have to ultimately own the decision of whether we should do a change. With the technical team advising whether it's a good idea.
Okay.
Right. But everything you think should be through a lens of how is it delivering benefit? It is aligned with the business strategy.
Again, back to strategy.
And that's where the business process owners become very important in the governance model.
So it's change benefit. What did you call them? Benefit people or
benefits owners?
Benefit owners. Change management and bringing people on the journey. One more question from me, and then if you have any others from the audience, we can go that. I suppose, having been through multiple transformations, what's the best advice you should have taken?
Spend more money on change management.
Okay, so that 10% of your budget?
Yeah, I'll tell you, sometimes you have a tough time agreeing that. But yeah, you should spend more time on change. You should invest more money. And by the way, when I say spend more money on change management, that isn't necessarily getting a bunch of consultants in.
Okay, so what does that mean?
Right? Just to be very clear on that.
Get loads of contractors.
Well, I mean, there's a time and place for contracts on the program, but you don't want to be overwhelmed with it. One, it's expensive. Two, it's ultimately they finish up and you lose all the knowledge. Right. But you need, so an example might be, you do probably need some external expertise. But it might be that you find some good people in HR who become a communications director. They
Yes.
have a day job, so maybe you've got a backfill.
Yeah.
Right, so that could be part of the cost. You might need to be investing some of the money on creating a quality video, content creation. You know, I mean, the workforce. And digitizing everything you're talking about. So it isn't. I'm not saying go out to. I mean, the SI will say, "Oh, look, we give you a big change management team." Yeah, but that shouldn't. Don't spend.
In your opinion.
No,
in your opinion.
Don't spend too much on that without your own people.
People, yeah.
Because then it just becomes too generic.
Perfect.
Yeah, and on that as well, I'm not sure if this is from someone who's hiring or someone who's entering themselves, but what would you say is the most important attribute for a successful individual on a digital transformation program?
Willingness to learn, willingness to admit you're wrong, and I think, you really want to be ambitious, and I think the best people on these programs are the best. They're like sponges.
Yeah.
They just want to suck in information and learn. And if you join one of these programs, it is a career-defining moment for you, because you will learn so much about program management, change management, process improvement, how the business works, and just absorb the information and think big and think end to end. Don't have a silo mentality. If you have a silo mentality on a program, go get out.
Yeah.
Get out. You will succeed or you will fail. Who cares if, say the solution works but data's in a bad place? Well, guess what? We're all.
That's everyone's problem.
Right? So, you want to be collaboration, get rid of the silo mentality, and just learn. Learn and admit when you're wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I've been wrong a few times.
But never.
Yes.
James, thank you so much.
Okay.
We really appreciate your time today. It was an education. As mentioned to everybody who signed up and everybody on the call today, we did record this, so you can watch it back. I'm sure myself and James and Rona looking forward to watching it back. Thank you all for your time today. Eating into some people's lunchtime, and wherever you are in the world, I hope you enjoyed it. Looking forward to doing another series in the future.